right, welcome to Enlivening Musings. I am Crystal here with Katie.
Hello.
And it is now the month of May, and we have decided to dedicate this podcast to motherhood for all of our May episodes here. And you know, it kind of makes sense with Mother's Day and everything, but it's also just such a huge topic. It's one that we will revisit in so many different ways, but I hope you enjoy it. And today we are going to be talking about postpartum. Now, this is such a huge topic that if we start going kind of crazy here, we might break this one up into two things. But if not, you know, we'll bring it up again in all kinds of different facets because there's so many things that go into the postpartum period. And I think we kind of were just thinking right off the bat, we should define what this is. Like, what is the postpartum period?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because it can mean a different time for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd say that. Like, most people sit there and think, oh, those first 6 weeks.
Yeah, or the first 40 days is becoming a common time frame. But I felt like once I hit that point, I still felt very postpartum and very much the need for still rest and nourishment. But because I had heard that first 40 days so much, I almost felt like, nope, well, that's it. I hope I did it all right.
I think that's what so many women feel.
Yeah.
That's so valid. And for me, so I have 3. I was astonished how much it was like that first year for me. Mm-hmm. I really felt it, I think, at like 10 months, I felt a lot more myself. And then at a year, I felt more myself. And actually, for me, it was having my cycle return. And that wasn't until 18 months for my first. Mm-hmm. You know, I was like 18 months postpartum. And that is so huge. Like, just thinking about that, like your body now telling you, okay, now I'm fertile again.
Yeah.
You know, now I'm ready. Not saying that you can't be fertile when you're not cycling yet, because you can be, especially in certain situations and stuff. But that was huge. And I think that people really benefit from listening to their bodies throughout that. Because it's like, when are you ready for anything postpartum? Like going back to work, lifting anything, doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hearing all this and remembering just how it was with my last child, because that's the first time, you know, he was my third. And that was the first time I really, really embraced the postpartum time and like had an understanding of like the sacredness of it and like the healing potential and just like the potency and all of those sort of things about it. Yeah, I mean, I think for sure a year. Almost, I mean, I tell a lot of women from a physical standpoint too. Like, you know, it's your choice of how your family grows, but really, I mean, 2 years is a good guidepost for women to know, like, okay, your body has likely recovered, any depletion has hopefully regulated, and it's maybe a good time for number 2 if you want number 2 or whichever one's coming next. But I also feel like if you're like a breastfeeding mother, to me, that still feels like postpartum kind of, because your body's still like not feeling fully yours.
Oh,
at least
man.
I still feel that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I feel I'm just getting my body back.
I
like,
know.
You know, I have longer nurslings, and having that just kind of like end, that could be a whole topic on itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think 2 years is really understandable. And yes, so many people love timing their kids in certain ways, and totally cool. Like, if you're vibrant and feeling great and like doing all of that, and that's what flows, or you have, you know, just like a whoopsie.
Yeah.
That's great too. And it's not about like ever being hard on yourself. It's just then how can we bring more nourishment and rejuvenation and revitalizing type things into the picture to keep those tissues and everything all those vitamin stores and everything, just like where we want it to be so we can feel that vitality throughout, because it can be very depleting. You know, when you're talking about depletion, I remember reading different articles about finding women 10 years postpartum still depleted of like nutrients and different things. I think they were all breastfeeding moms. Gosh, now I want to go on a research binge. But I think that that's huge to think about, like how much it takes to recover. And it's such a beautiful thing and yet a natural thing. And yet it takes so much.
It takes vitality from us. But it's okay. Like you said, it's a natural cycle. I think where maybe things have kind of gone off the rails a bit is we stopped honoring what's needed during the postpartum time. I think that's the only piece that kind of has went missing.
And the tribal community piece.
Yeah. And the support. And I think a lot of women, it's interesting because probably like our mothers really didn't have support at all. And so what's interesting is I remember hearing people say how healing it could be for like my mom to see me cared for during the postpartum time, because there might be some still pain and resentment in her life, feeling like it was really hard and she did it alone, and maybe, you know, her mother wasn't there for her. So to see me get cared for could be super healing for her to heal those wounds in herself, which I thought was such a beautiful way to look at it.
Well, and absolutely. I mean, like that's anything that we're healing, right?
Yeah.
With any of those generational wounds. When you heal in this time and space, you're healing how many? And like, is it 7 before you and 7 after you?
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why it's so great to see this conversation happening more, and like women starting to talk more about the postpartum time and healing and changing the narrative around it, because like we were talking about, like postpartum is now like synonymous with postpartum depression.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of that.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That. And so that makes me want to kind of go in that direction a little bit. So you can have an ecstatic postpartum. Like, I know we're going to go into kind of all the things that can be really hard.
Yeah.
And like, unfun and or need more healing and more support. And before even venturing in that direction, I want to at least give some acknowledgement to the fact that it can be super ecstatic, just like birth. Birth can be ecstatic birth. It can be orgasmic birth. And yet, you know, there's this whole portrayal of just how awful and wrenching and crazy it is, which can also be true. And so it's just one of those things where even though we're going to talk about these harder components and aspects, I want everyone to remember or just know that, yes, it can be. It can be like, I had somebody describe it on a thread the other day as like a new love affair, something. I was just like, oh my goodness, that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's what it was for her. It was this love affair, falling in love with her baby and her partner and like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And you think of a honeymoon, and that's what it was full of for her.
Yeah.
And it can be that way. And it is helpful to have different things in place to make that a possibility or more of a possibility.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because I've had that experience with myself. I mean, I really enjoy the postpartum time. I love that newborn stage. And especially with our middle child, which was the first child for me and my husband together, I mean, it was so beautiful, like having that time. He was able to take off 3 months, work with me. And so we just had the best time. And it felt so good to be cared for, because with my oldest daughter, I was a single parent. I still actually love the postpartum time with her. Thinking back, I only have good memories. But with my daughter, Louise, feeling the support of my husband was just so amazing. And we were just so happy. It was great. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't have to be hard.
I love that. I feel similarly with my second. So then my first with my partner too. Same story.
Yeah. Oh, weird. Yeah.
It was more supported like that. And her birth was really fast and easy. All of my births were, though. Yeah. But with her, it was one of those things where I almost felt like back to normal right away, And I felt like even my sensuality and like desire for anything in that realm come back sooner. Even though I'd say my postpartum lochia, the bleeding part, went on forever. And I ended up looking for homeopathic support for that. And then, boom, it was all done a day after homeopathic support.
Wow.
Yeah.
That, what's interesting is I wonder if part of like even the labor feeling, like you said, like easy and fast, also had to do with you feeling really supported by your partner.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a whole nother thing to discuss, is how feeling supported can make everything better.
Yeah, it is.
And because it makes you feel safe. And that needs to happen.
Absolutely.
That's what needs to happen in order for the birth to happen, is you feel safe.
Yeah.
It's very animalistic, but it's true.
It's very true. And I think that is a great big aha takeaway thing that everyone listening should consider. Whether you've had a child already or you're planning your first, what does make you feel safe? Mm-hmm. What do you need? Take time to actually think about that and write it out or feel on it and put that into motion. What do you need to feel safe? And you can do that for the birthing process and then also for the postpartum process. So I think that's a good transition into what are some ways for us to support ourselves postpartum. What are important things to look at? So we've covered just safety. Boom.
Yeah.
Is your home safe? Does that whole situation feel good? Is there other things that you need in that? Do you have family nearby? Do you don't? Do you enjoy having your family around? Do you not? All of those things. I remember feeling like I had to prepare my dad that I might not want his wife around as much as I normally would during such a vulnerable time when I had my first, especially because I hadn't experienced anything before. So I wasn't sure. All I knew was I was going to be vulnerable and open. And when the time came, I was totally fine having her around as much as I normally would like having her around. But I remember feeling that and having to speak to that and say, I just want to prepare you for when you guys come to visit, that I could be in some weird state and who knows what I'm going to think or feel.
Right. Yeah. I remember having some experiences like that too when people come and visit, and it's great. But for me, I just wanted to be the one having my baby on me. And when people wanted to come and hold her, it was I couldn't handle it. And I didn't know I was going to feel that way because I was by myself when I had my oldest. So then, we practiced. And by the third one, I kind of knew, and I really didn't have any visitors aside from you, Crystal. You were my doula.
Yes.
I really didn't have a ton of visitors, and that was okay because I knew I was really vulnerable and needed to heal, and I think everyone understood, my family came and stuff like that, but I definitely didn't want acquaintances or maybe my husband's friends that I didn't really know that well. Because physically all these things are happening and you're breastfeeding, and it's just such a vulnerable time. There's just no other way to describe it.
Yeah. I remember, oh my goodness. I think we should do a whole episode on breastfeeding because I'm thinking about with my first one, and I'd wear all these button-down shirts, for this easy access, and having different family members that were extended family members coming, and I was just like, here I am.
Yeah.
You're gonna see things because I'm not one to, and it's totally cool if you want to cover up and all of those types of things, but I'm not one to do that, and I don't want to do that. And if you're not comfortable with it, sorry, this is how nature works and is meant to work, and our society actually benefits from like learning that and seeing that. And I wish I saw more of it. I remember like being hushed and shoved out of a room when one of my aunts was breastfeeding and then pumping, or both, or something. And I couldn't go see. And here I'm this little girl who, that would benefit me. That's a huge challenge that shows up postpartum, actually. We can caveat there just for a minute because it is. People haven't seen it. They haven't grown up seeing it. It's happening now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't when we were growing up.
And it wasn't for a lot of reasons even. I remember talking with my own mom, and they were like really pushing formula, like from like almost like a government status down. Like they were just, formula was really being pushed out as it was better than breast milk.
Right.
And I think, I'm sure a lot of moms of that generation feel really bad about that now because they were just trying to do what was best for their baby. I mean, I wouldn't like that, knowing that that I kind of got tricked into thinking formula was going to be better than breast milk for my child. And, and sometimes it can be challenging those first few months. So if someone's like, yeah, well, you should just be doing formula anyway, I could see how that generation, again, just kind of lost some of that. No fault of their own.
No. But how big of an impact on society, and how amazing for those of us who are claiming our intuition and everything back, because that manipulation completely derailed women's intuition and their inner knowingness and their ability to listen to that. And I think that during pregnancy, that just amps up. You're sitting there and it's like, oh, I don't like this. I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. Or you're more sensitive to, physically, you're more sensitive to smells and all kinds of different things. And so now you're in this place where you can really listen to that. So especially if you're out there listening and hearing this and you're the type of person who hasn't been listening to your intuition and you're pregnant or experiencing that, then start. Listening to your body, listening to your intuition. Those instincts are so profound. And when you get into postpartum, they're really important as well, because you know what you need. And that does lead into postpartum depression as a topic, because that's where some of that can start to get hijacked. When you're sitting there and you're feeling confused, like, is this my intuition saying this, or are all these awful things going to happen? Like, that starts to lead into like postpartum psychosis and stuff, which I definitely experienced with my first. So as much as I loved the postpartum period with my first and all of that, even though it was super hard because I didn't have much support. I had my housemates, and that was about it. And I had 2 friends who did overnights with me, 2 different nights, those first couple nights. But I was so depleted. I had the craziest thoughts. And I didn't even know that postpartum psychosis was a thing until I'm doing my bachelor's and taking these development classes and reading about this stuff. And I was just like, whoa, that's textbook what I experienced, And now it's fascinating because now that I've had that experience, today I can tell when my serotonin levels are too low, which happens like if I don't get enough sleep or anything like that. And it's because the exact same things start happening in my mind. And I can feel it. I go, oh, my serotonin's too low because I only got 4 hours of sleep that night and ... So for me now, it's a huge indicator. So of course, there's all sorts of gifts and gems in these crazy experiences. But that's a real thing. And so your intuition could get hijacked if you are so depleted.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's so interesting to talk about because that makes me think of, with my first two, I was really, really worried of weird, like, things happening to her.
Yeah, me too. Oh,
like
man.
her getting dropped or, like, flying out of the car while I was driving or, like...
Yep.
And I didn't know that was a thing either at the time. And even now, as we're talking about, I'm like, oh, yeah, I just thought that was, like, new motherhood worries. But I didn't feel that way with my other two.
Right.
Not to that extreme.
No, me neither.
So
I
that's
didn't.
interesting. And I hear other women talk about kind of more like a postpartum anxiety, more concerns. Not that they're always just feeling sad or disconnected from their baby, but they're just having crazy levels of anxiety. I find like when you're already not sleeping, I kind of coined it my own term like this, insomnia based off of not being able to sleep, like a sleep anxiety, I would call it, because you know you're going to get woken up. So it's hard to fall asleep. And that sleep deprivation creates a whole interesting experience, especially when it's extended.
Oh, absolutely.
For, 12 months or more with certain kiddos. So,
well, and so, of course, I want to bring the Ayurvedic lens in here because it's extremely pertinent. So in Ayurveda, there's 3 main doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Vata, when it is deranged, that means you have excessive, too much, and it's the element of air or ether space. You can think about it that way. Is when you have excessive anxiety and flightiness and a really hard time getting into your body. You could be constipated. I mean, there's so many things that go into it, but it happens from being depleted. And in the postpartum period, you go from being in a pitta hot state into a vata state. It's because there's different times of life, and then there's different seasons, and all of them pertain to one of the doshas. And so this is like that time transition. So you go from being pitta to vata. So when that happens, it it makes all of that more likely to even be a thing. And then you throw in sleep deprivation and tending to all these needs, and you're trying to heal. And so it's a perfect storm. So that's one of the things that I do then when I'm being the role of a postpartum doula is the Abhyanga. Because the Abhyanga is a bodywork treatment that's designed to call all of that air and ether back into its home in the digestion. And so you literally wring it out of the muscles and the rest of the body, super slow. You're helping the body get into that parasympathetic state to get some deep rest and rejuvenation, even if the person isn't falling asleep during the treatment or anything. And you're anointing the body with oil. So it's really making it so that way, because Vata is also very dry. So it's dry and cold. So you bring the warmth back in. And that is something that we see when we go into all of the traditional cultures for healing postpartum, is bringing the warmth back into the body.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like to do is moxibustion, because that brings the... Are you remembering?
I'm remembering all of this. I'm having a moment over here because this is like why I reached out to Crystal and hired her to be a doula for me, because I wanted this work. And if you're listening, wherever you live, if you're local, call Crystal. If you're not, find someone in your area to just receive these treatments, because both of them and the Moxa, it was incredible.
Yeah.
So sorry.
No, it's awesome. No, I want it.
I know. I'm just sitting here like remembering it, and like it just felt so nourishing. And like we did a foot bath, and just even having someone come in and sit with me when I was having moments of anxiety, and you would just like talk to me and maybe like rub my feet while you did it, or just sit there and drink tea. One time, the other Crystal came and did a little restorative yoga with me and bringing me food that was so nourishing, and it just hit the spot every time. And so I'm kind of going on into the things that are helpful, but that food component and the warmth, like you said, like, I mean, so important. Pretty much every other culture acknowledges, like, Mom, you stay home, you're in bed, you're not leaving the house, you're eating only warm food, you're dressing warm. Some people don't even shower, like, because they don't want to get cold. So, yeah,
well,
so interesting.
And that is one of those things that there's some other interesting things that people do that, you can do if it feels good, and then know other things that could maybe help beyond that. And what I'm thinking about is things such as cold pads. People will take a pad and they'll soak sitz herbs and put that on the pad and put it in the freezer. And it has a place, and if it feels really good because you have a lot of inflammation, then go for it. And then you also might want to use some warm water in a peri bottle or anything, to bring that warmth back to that region, because warmth brings blood and blood heals.
Yeah.
So whenever, even just other injuries, when people do hot cold, it's like, yes, because I've heard and I like to just end on hot. So it's just, even if it's just a minute or something, so that you're bringing the blood flow back.
Yeah.
So that's something to take into consideration if you're doing any sort of cold stuff. And even if you're birthing in the summertime, it's still the same. Don't sit somewhere where you're going to get a cold breeze on the back of your neck. You can have a breeze and you can cool off, but make sure that you're keeping your core warm, and, that back of the neck, that's in Chinese medicine to catch cold. And it's that whole womb space, front and back, keeping that whole area just nice and warm and feeling the love. And there's other traditional cultures where the man would be working on building a fire for the woman to lay over. So she'd have this fire just like nourishing her. And of course, then in that tribal type community, baby can go to all of these different people. Though I'm like you and I don't want my baby to leave me. Yeah. There's times when that really works and feels really great, so that the mom can just heal and be in that, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, And I think, I'm curious if going on about the warming foods will take too much time, because I do want to. We're gonna have to do a part 2.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to do a part 2 because there's so much still to talk about, and we're running out of time for this one. So we'll do a part 2. But I think let's end just a little bit with the warming foods, and then we'll jump right back in. So you'll have to wait and catch us on the continuation. So warming foods are the same. Chinese culture, Chinese medicine is more what I meant to say, and Ayurveda both have very specific ways of creating warming foods. And that brings all of the warmth back into the body, and also honoring that your digestion, one of the things I talk about is your digestion is just like baby's digestion. So you're going to be eating little small meals those first few days, just like baby's going to be having just this little bit of milk those first few days, and it gradually starts to increase, and your digestive fires can start to rebuild. And that's one of the reasons too. You need easy to digest, easy to assimilate. Let your digestive fires start building back up, because it's when your digestive fires are strong that you can break down, assimilate everything without like negative bowel type things.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved that part of the postpartum care too. It was so nice just knowing there was food there and it was the right food for me. And it really like always kind of hit the spot too because and normally I mean I'm a meat eater whatever, but during that time however long I didn't have any meat. That was kind of part of the protocol, I would say, or plan. And it was good because it wasn't what I didn't even want it. And I think I remember even texting you, like I felt like it really like reset my diet in such a healthy way too, because I was just like craving all these healthy foods, and it gave me ideas of like meals I still cook now, when I'm still like kind of busy and running, making lunch for the kids. There's certain things I'll throw together that I remember you brought me, and it was really good and fast and nourishing. So there's just so many benefits that continue long term when you're cared for during the postpartum time. I just can't stress it enough to people, whether it's hiring someone to come in to cook or clean or care for you, or having your partner take time off, or having a family member or loved one come in and help. Plan for it.
Yeah, and any of those things.
It doesn't have to be all of them. You just do the best you can. Not everyone is in the position to hire someone like that, but do the best you can and just plan for it, I think, is what we want people to do. Plan for the postpartum.
And really be open to the possibilities, because you might reach out to some postpartum doulas who are in a place where they have people who paid it forward and they can do it for free or super discount. So also, if you're not in a financial abundant state right now and thinking you can't afford it, get creative and still reach out to people, because there's so many options. And exactly. Plan for it. I love that. Okay, so we'll wrap that one up here, and we'll start part 2 so that you can keep hearing all of the goodness about postpartum. And before we completely log off for today, I do want to let everyone know that I have a fun 3-day immersion coming at the end of May here. It's the last weekend of May. I think it's 28th, 29th, 30th, or it's 29th, 30th, 31st. It's the weekend, the last weekend. I don't have a calendar in front of me. And it is called Fall in Love with You. And it is all about that. And it's great for especially people who've gone through the postpartum period and have kind of lost themselves and are ready to fall madly in love with themselves again. And you'll have forever access to it. So you can find that on, it's enhanceutv.com, which you spell out enhance, and then it's just the letter U, tv.com, under the Aliveness Academy. So
awesome. And I can vouch for her classes. The immersions are awesome. They're super powerful. Getting together those 3 days in a row, you'll definitely feel some positive changes. They're just great.
I love the 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
I think it's huge.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you and hope you have a lovely, lovely day.
Bye.